I never planned on moving back home. Not really. After years of grinding through city life, sleeping on the couch of a tech office, chasing paychecks and pretending stress was ambition, I wanted silence. Just some damn peace. So when a family friend reached out saying they were selling their old house back in my country and needed the cash fast, it felt like the universe was finally cutting me a break. A whole house in the middle of the capital city for a price that almost felt illegal. They hadn't lived there in years. Moved abroad, left things mid-renovation. They told me it needed work, a little cleanup, maybe a few repairs. I told them, don't worry. I'm good with fixer-uppers. Yeah. I was wrong about that. The first time I saw it, it didn't feel like a house. It felt like a memory someone had abandoned. The main door was locked with just a rusted padlock, not even a real lock. Half-painted walls, exposed wiring, dust thick enough to choke on. The air smelled like damp concrete and something else I couldn't name, something old. Still, I stood in that empty living room and told myself it was going to be fine. The house wasn't cursed or haunted. It was just forgotten. And maybe that was something I understood a little too well. The first few nights were quiet, almost too quiet. My dogs adjusted faster than I did. They didn't bark, didn't growl, just wandered around sniffing everything, tails wagging like they knew something I didn't. The first real sign that something was off came that same week. When I moved in, there was this old bike parked in my garage. It looked like it hadn't been touched in months, dust caked on the seat, one tire half deflated. So I did what any new homeowner would do, rolled it out and left it on the road. That evening, someone started pounding on my gate, hard, the kind of pounding that makes your spine straighten before your brain catches up. I didn't answer, just stood behind the curtain watching. The man was maybe in his 60s, short, wiry, wearing an oil-stained shirt. He kept muttering to himself, then tried the gate again, rattling it like he owned the place. After 15 minutes of pacing and cursing, he finally left, wheeling that same bike away. I remember thinking, okay, old man, that's not creepy at all. But I brushed it off. People get territorial about stupid things, especially when a house that sat empty for years suddenly isn't. After that, things were fine, mostly. Every now and then, someone would park in front of my gate. A delivery truck. A random scooter. Maybe they thought it was still an abandoned house. So I painted a big no parking sign across the gate, bright red letters, loud and obnoxious. That seemed to fix it, until last week. That's when things got really strange. It was a hot Thursday afternoon, the kind where you can feel the air sticking to your skin. I got home from work, tossed my shirt in the laundry basket, and went for a shower. Halfway through, I noticed the water pressure dropping, not just weak, like barely a trickle. I frowned, turned off the tap, and just stood there dripping, listening. That's when I heard it, a faint mechanical hum from next door, my neighbor's water pump. Now I'd seen the guy a few times, that same old man from the bike. He lived alone on the ground floor of a 3-story building right beside mine. The top 2 floors were rented out to tenants, and from what I'd heard from the previous owners, he wasn't exactly the friendly type. Apparently, he'd raised hell when the house was sold, claimed the new owner would ruin the peace of the neighborhood. I almost laughed when they told me that. Peace? The man lived beside an abandoned construction site. Still, I remembered his face that day at the gate, the cold stare, the unblinking silence before he left. Something about it felt personal. When the water pressure came back to normal a few minutes later, I shrugged it off. Coincidence, right? Old pipes, maybe. But the next day it happened again, and again the day after. Every single time, I'd hear that low humming from his side, and the moment it stopped, my water would start flowing fine again. That's when the realization hit me like a slap. He was stealing my water. It sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud, My neighbor is siphoning my water, like something out of a sitcom. But the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. The old bills from the previous owners had been weirdly high. They'd even mentioned possible leaks. And this guy? He'd had 3 years of access to an empty property with no one watching. All he had to do was sneak in, connect his pump to one of my lines, and boom, free water forever. I spent that night walking around my backyard with a flashlight, tracing pipes like some DIY detective. Didn't find the connection point, but I didn't need to. The timing told me everything. He was stealing from me. And the worst part? He'd been doing it long before I even lived here. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my dogs curled up at my feet, and thought about that humming noise. About how casually he'd looked me in the eye that day by the gate, like he owned everything he could touch. It wasn't about money. Water here costs next to nothing, $5 a month maybe. It was about audacity. The kind of entitlement that makes someone think they can take from you and still look you in the eye afterward. And something inside me, something I didn't know I still had in me, started to boil. Over the next few days, I tested it again. Turned on taps at random times. Every single time, that humming matched the drop in pressure. By the third test, I wasn't even angry anymore. I was calm. Too calm. I started planning, not like some movie villain planning world domination. No. More like a quiet, personal kind of justice. The kind that doesn't require shouting, just patience, because revenge isn't loud. It's silent, so I waited. 4 days ago, Monday night. He turned on his pump just like always. I walked to the main valve in my yard, took a deep breath and turned it off. Just a flick of my wrist, no confrontation. No words, just silence. Then I waited. See? The way those pumps work, if water stops coming in, the pump just keeps running, trying to fill a tank that'll never fill. It burns itself out. Slowly. I knew that, and I knew he didn't. So I sat by the window with a beer in my hand, listening to that faint hum from his side. I could almost picture it, the pump screaming as it ran dry, the wires heating up, the fuse straining. It went on for hours. By 3 a.m., I heard shouting. His tenants panicked, stumbling out in the dark. Why's there no power? Why's there no water? Their voices echoed through the night. I could hear the old man's voice too. Defensive, frustrated, cracking, then silence again. And I just sat there, in the dark, watching the lights go out next door. I should have felt bad. But I didn't. All I felt was this. Hollow satisfaction, the kind that settles deep in your chest, cold and clean. He'd taken something from me. And I'd taken something back. Not just water, but control. Still, I couldn't shake one thought as I sat there staring through the window. If this was just the beginning of my new life in this house, what the hell else was waiting for me here? The next morning felt off. You ever wake up after doing something that wasn't exactly wrong, but it wasn't right either? That's how I felt. The house was too quiet. Even my dogs seemed to sense something was different. They followed me everywhere that morning, tails low, eyes tracking me like they could read the storm in my chest. I made coffee, opened the window, and stared at the neighbor's house. His curtains were drawn. The tenants' balconies looked abandoned. Doors shut, laundry gone, no sound. No humming, no life. I almost smiled. Almost. By noon, the rumor mill had already started. In a neighborhood like this, privacy doesn't exist. Every whisper is an earthquake. The delivery guy who brought my groceries leaned in and said, "You heard what happened to old man Rao? His wiring caught fire. Whole house lost power." He said it like gossip, but I could see the worry behind it. People didn't like that man, but they didn't hate him either. He'd lived there for 30 years. Fixed bikes, fixed engines, fixed lives, until time turned him bitter. I nodded politely, pretended to care. But deep down, I did care. Just not the way I was supposed to. because hearing someone else describe the chaos I caused, it was like watching a movie I'd already seen, but with the sound turned off. That evening, I saw movement. The tenants were outside arguing with the landlord, the old man himself. He looked smaller than before. Not physically, just diminished. Like someone had taken the air out of him. He kept rubbing his forehead, waving his hands, pleading. They were shouting. Then, one by one, they walked away. Suitcases, backpacks, silence. He stood there long after they were gone. No yelling now, no anger. Just a man standing in the middle of an empty courtyard, staring at the ground like it might answer him back. And for the first time, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt seen, like he could feel my eyes on him. That night I tried to sleep, but the silence wouldn't let me. There's a kind of quiet that doesn't comfort. It suffocates. I kept hearing phantom sounds, the pump, the gate, the thud of a hand against metal. Around midnight, I got up, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and then I froze. The dogs were growling, low, steady. Their eyes locked on the front door. I killed the light, listened, a faint scrape against metal. Someone was outside. For a second, my heart stopped. Then, silence again. I stood there in the dark for a full minute before I moved. When I finally opened the door and stepped onto the porch, there was nothing. No footsteps, no shadow, no one. Just a faint, burnt smell drifting over from the neighbor's yard. The next day, I found out from the shopkeeper down the street, Old Row's tenants filed police complaints. They say he's not maintaining the property. No power, no water. They're fining him. I didn't ask how much. Didn't need to. In this country, a fine that big could wreck someone like him. The shopkeeper lowered his voice. He's moving out. Going to stay with his daughter. Poor man can't live alone anymore. Poor man. The phrase hit me like a dull knife. I told myself it wasn't my fault. He stole from me. He brought this on himself. But as I looked across the fence that evening, saw his windows dark, his house half dead, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd done something. Irreversible. 2 nights later, it happened again. The dogs barked at 2 a.m., loud and frantic. I ran downstairs, half asleep, grabbed the flashlight, and scanned the yard. Nothing. Then I noticed it. My gate latch was open. My heart started hammering. I stepped outside slowly, light trembling in my hand. Every sound, a creak, a rustle, a breath, felt magnified. And then I saw it. On the ground, near the gate, was a small metal wrench, old, rusted, the kind a mechanic might carry. I didn't need to guess whose it was. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Was he trying to get in? Was it a warning? Or maybe he just dropped it on his way out, a forgotten relic from the man he used to be. Either way, it didn't matter, because that wrench, that stupid, rusted wrench, felt like his ghost had walked right through my walls and left a message I couldn't read. By Sunday, he was gone. A moving truck came early in the morning. His daughter, tall, mid-40s, hair tied back, supervised as they loaded up boxes and furniture. He came out last. No words, no glances. Just a slow shuffle to the car, head down, shoulders heavy. For a split second, he looked toward my house. Our eyes met, and that look, it wasn't hate. It was recognition. He knew. He knew what I'd done. And he knew I wasn't sorry. That night, I sat outside with a beer, watching the stars fade behind city haze. The house next door was finally empty, silent again. I should have felt relief. Peace. Instead, I felt this ache in my chest, this weird, pulsing guilt that wouldn't go away. Because when I turned off that water valve, I thought I was just teaching him a lesson. But maybe I'd destroyed something much bigger, and I didn't even know what yet, but I would soon, because the night he left, the noise came back, a low hum, faint, mechanical, coming from inside my walls. I remembered the exact sound, that low mechanical hum. It was faint, almost like a heartbeat you weren't supposed to hear. At first, I thought it was just my head playing tricks on me. Guilt can do that. It can whisper in the quiet, make you hear things that aren't really there. But this wasn't guilt. This was real. The sound was coming from inside my walls. I killed the lights, stood in the dark, and listened. The dogs started pacing, whining, uneasy. They'd been calm for weeks, but now they couldn't sit still. The hum grew louder. It was rhythmic, mechanical, like the old pump next door. But that was impossible. He was gone. The pump was gone. The house next door was dead, so why could I still hear it? I followed the sound. It came from the back bathroom, the one I'd been meaning to fix since I moved in. I pressed my ear to the tile wall, and there it was, that same steady vibration. For a second, I thought maybe I was losing it. But then the mirror fogged up even though I hadn't run the water. The pipes rattled softly. Something was moving through them. That's when I called the plumber. He came the next morning, a short, round man with cigarette breath and a laugh too big for his face. He listened, nodded, and said, "Old houses, man. Pipes got memory. Sometimes they hum after years of pressure." I didn't buy that for a second. Still, I let him check everything. The valves, the mains, the underground joints. After an hour, he looked at me and said, "You got something weird here." He pointed at a line running along the back wall, a pipe that led under the fence. "Toward my neighbor's house. This one's not yours," he said. "Looks like someone added it later. Probably years ago. I didn't have to guess who. I told him to cut it." Right there. He shrugged, pulled out his tools, and got to work. Metal screeched. Water hissed. And when the pipe snapped open, the sound stopped. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. No hum, no noise. Just peace, but peace doesn't last. Not when it's built on someone else's pain. The next morning, there was a knock at my gate. Soft, polite, not the angry pounding I'd heard before. When I opened it, a woman stood there, mid-40s, sharp eyes, exhaustion written across her face. "His daughter. You're the new owner, right?" she asked. "I'm sorry to bother you. I just came to pick up something my father left behind." She held up a small key, the kind used for padlocks. My chest tightened. "He said he left it here years ago," she continued, "back when the house was empty. Some tools, maybe." I wanted to say no, to tell her there was nothing left of him here. But something in her voice stopped me. She wasn't angry. She was tired. The kind of tired that comes from watching someone you love fall apart piece by piece. So I let her in. We walked through the yard together. The sunlight hit the old bricks just right, warm and peaceful. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking through someone's grave. She stopped near the fence where the cut pipe still dripped into the dirt. Stared at it for a long time, then she said quietly, "He used to fix everything himself. Couldn't stand asking for help. When he got older, he started cutting corners, connecting things, saving money." She turned to me. "I know what he did." My throat went dry. "He told me before he left," she said. "He said he'd been taking water from this house, that he thought nobody would ever move in again." He felt ashamed. I couldn't speak. She sighed. "You did what you had to do." But he didn't have much left. After the fines, after the tenants left, he just broke, you know? Then she smiled, a small, sad smile. "Anyway, I just came for his tools." We found them in the back shed, a small rusted box filled with wrenches, bolts, old scraps of metal. The same kind of wrench I'd found by the gate. She took it, thanked me softly, and left. But as she walked away, I noticed something strange. The ground near the fence and the part where the plumber had cut the pipe was wet again. I crouched down. The soil was damp, and beneath it I could hear it, that faint, distant hum. The plumber came back the next day. We dug deeper, followed the sound. The pipe didn't end where we thought. It twisted underground, split in two, one branch heading toward my neighbor's house, the other curving back toward my own foundation. He frowned. Weird. Someone connected it back to your main line. Like a loop. Water flowing from me to him and back again. A closed circuit. No start. No end. I told him to rip the whole thing out. He started digging. And that's when his shovel hit something solid. Metal. We cleared the dirt. And there it was. An old corroded water pump, buried, hidden under layers of soil and rust. It shouldn't have been running. It shouldn't have worked. But when I leaned close, it was vibrating. Still humming. That night, I couldn't stay inside. I sat on the porch, the dogs restless, the air heavy with the smell of rain. The house next door was dark, silent. But in the silence, that faint hum returned, from the ground this time. Like the earth itself was breathing, and suddenly I felt it, this wave of cold running through me. What if it wasn't about water? What if it wasn't just plumbing or pipes or revenge? What if I'd become part of the system he built? A system that didn't care who turned the valve as long as the water kept flowing. A loop feeding itself. I'd cut him off. But maybe I hadn't stopped him. Maybe I'd just taken his place. The next morning, I packed a bag. Called a real estate agent. Told her I wanted to sell, she asked. Already? You just moved in. I said, yeah, I'm not much of a homeowner, I guess. She laughed, but I didn't. As I locked the gate for the last time, I glanced back at the yard. The ground was damp again. A slow, steady leak, seeping up from the earth. And in the distance, faint, but unmistakable, that hum. I drove away without looking back. Somewhere behind me, under that old house, the water still flowed. Endless. Unstoppable. A quiet reminder that some debts never really dry up.